Doing finance can be a little stressful. They don't teach you that in school, but it is one of the most important things in life. So I'm gonna help you track them in Notion. This is not a financial advice, and I'm just going to show you how I track them in Notion. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to organize and track your income and bills. We're gonna make a list sorted out by their due dates, whether they are paid, unpaid, or overdue. You can also put there if we already received our money for our income or not yet, or it is still pending. We will go through all of that in this tutorial. Mind you that this doesn't have any formulas or overcomplicated stuff. A beginner-friendly tutorial in Notion. If you want the template right off the bat, the link is in the description. But for now, let's start. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start with a new clean page. This page, we're going to call this our finance page. So with this finance page, we're going to start with an empty page. I'm not gonna go into details on how you would do your dashboard, but basically in this finance, we're going to put a header, monthly budgeting. You're just gonna click these 6 dots on the left side and you just turn it into headings. So for this, I'm just going to turn it into a heading 2. After this, we're going to make a page, a new page, but it is also connected on the last page that we have made. We're just going to click the finance on the upper left corner of your Notion, and then we are back to the main page or your dashboard. For your dashboard, you're going to click again the untitled because this is where we're going to make the Notion template to track your monthly budget. We're going to name our page. This is for the month that you are going to track your budget. The month prior to making this video, it is January. So I'm going to put a January budget here. We're going to go to the upper right corner and then there's a triple dot there and you're just going to click the full width because we're going to need the full width of the page so that we could see clearly the tables and the calendars. In the body, we're going to make 4 lines. Just put any random words, but I'm going to put text here. Text 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for these 4 text here, we're going to make columns. To make columns, you're going to drag the second text here, drag this onto the right side of the first text. And then same with the next text here, going to drag it all the way to the third text. So we have now 2 columns and 2 rows. We will also gonna separate them by rows, and in order to do that, we're going to type in 3 dashes, 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to have our line here, and you're going to drag them in between the text. Be careful of doing that because you're going to mistakenly put it in just one column. Be sure you're going to put it in the whole page. There's 2 rows now and then 2 columns, and let's start with the upper right column. We're going to erase the text and then create a database. For the database, we're going to click the inline and then a table will appear. First table will be our billing. So we're going to put this January billing. Be sure to name your database because it'll be confusing along the way. We could also put the year here, just to be sure. So for our billing, we're going to change the name as the source. This is where we put our sources of our bills, other stuff, other expenses. You know what? Let's change that to expenses. Okay, so these are your January 2024 expenses. So the sources is here. The next will be not tags. We're going to delete this property. What you call this columns here, these are properties. So we're going to add a property. We're going to put a number. You're going to see these little settings here, and then we're going to click the number format, and then we're going to click the currency that you wanted to put in. For the sake of the video, I'm going to put the US dollar. And then after the US dollar, I'm going to change the icon. You can change the icon of the property by clicking this one. This is going to be money. And then this one, currency money. And then we're going to change the name. This is gonna be our monthly due. So that's good to go. We're going to click the back, and then we're going to add another property, which is the date. We're just going to put here the due date. So for the due date, there are a few date formats. There are full dates or month, day, year. It depends on what you like. It depends on your preference. But for me, I'm going to click relative. What happens in relative is if the due date is coming near, for example, 1 week before the due date, for example, January 31, we're going to click that. It's gonna come up as next Wednesday. But after 1 week, for example, the 7th, is going to show as a full date. So it's just my preference. You're free to choose whatever you want. And then we're going to add another property, which we're going to select. And in here in select, we're going to name this as our status. In status, we're going to add an option just below the settings, and then we're going to type in paid. Enter. Don't forget to enter because it won't show if you're not gonna enter it. Next is unpaid. Next is overdue. So we can also change the colors. For example, this overdue, we're going to make it as red. And for the paid, we can make it as green. And then unpaid, we can make it as gray. So I think the status is good. And we're going to go back and then create a new property again through select. Rename it as mode of payment. In this property, we're going to add an option. For example, we're going to put debit. We're going to put credit. We're going to put bank 1, and then maybe Venmo, maybe PayPal, whatever you want. But for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to have 5 of this here. And for our last property, we are still going to click the select. This will be the type of expenses. So just put type here. And then for the options, we have here, for example, we are going to be paying for our investments. Enter. Our grocery. We could also put here our bills. For example, electric bills, water bills, internet bills, rent. If you're renting right now, we could also put subscription here. For our Spotify or YouTube subscription or any subscription that you have. That's it for our table. Close this little setting here and then adjust the table. For us to adjust the table, you're going to hover your mouse in the middle of the columns, and then there's going to be a line here. Just drag them, and then we're also going to adjust the sizes of the columns here so that it fits on our page. So we have now our table. We also have our properties. Let's fill up at least one source right now so you can see how it looks like. To do that, we're going to open one row. So this is actually an empty page. This page is linked to the table. So whenever you are editing in this page, it's going to affect the table that we have just made. So for example, we're going to put here the water bill. You could also add an icon. So for the due date, for example, it is due date, let's say today. And then the mode of payment will be our credit. And then monthly due, for example, just $123. And as you can see, as we have chosen the US dollar earlier, it reflects a dollar sign in the monthly due. So for the status, we're going to put paid here. And then the type, of course, it is going to be a bill. And that's it. That's how it looks like on the table. I'm just going to fill 2 or 3 sources here and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have now a Spotify in our table and also the rent. Me personally, I actually have a lot of expenses, different kind of expenses, different sources. So my Notion page is actually longer because of the sources. But for now, we only have these 3 for the tutorial. Next is we're going to make a list. This list allows us to see the expenses sorted out by their due dates and also their status. So to start, we're going to erase the text in the next column, in the second column, and we're going to put a list view. We're going to click this and then we're going to choose the January 2024 expenses. That's what we just made earlier. And click this one. Also, don't forget to click the new empty view since we only have the table view. New empty view and then list and then done. Now we have our list, but we also need to see the status and the due dates. So for that, we are going to click the properties here in the settings, and then there's an icon in here and you're just going to click for the due date and the status. Close that one and then you're going to see here due date and the status. So for us to be able to see the next due date, we're going to sort this out. Just click the sort here in the upper corner and then click due date, and then there we have it. So if you want to hide the due date, you can just click the filter here and it hides it. I don't know why it works, but it works. So what we also need to do is we're going to hide the database title and then change the list here view, rename it as the expenses list. So that is basically our January 2024 expenses. The next will be our January 2024 income. It is actually just the same as January 2024 expenses, but with income. Please listen to the next step as this is going to be a crucial part of the next table. So what we're going to do is this: click the 6 dots in the left side of the building overview, and you're going to duplicate it without content. Just wait for it to load, and then there it is. So what we're going to do with this new table that we have duplicated from the expenses, we're going to drag this all the way down to text. We have here now the text. We're just going to delete the text as it was just temporary, and then we're going to rename everything in here because this is going to be our income. Just erase the expenses and change it to income, and then we're going to rename also the billing overview as our income overview. So the next step is pretty much the same as the expenses. The terms are gonna be a little different. Monthly due, we're going to change that as our income flow, and then the due date, we're going to change that as our income date, and then in the status, the same, mode of payment, the same, and the type, the same. What we're going to change here instead is the options on the status. What we're going to do is right click status and then edit property. And then we have here the overdue, unpaid, and paid. We're going to delete these options. And then after deleting this option, we're going to add an option. And for this one, we're going to put received, pending, to be received. Okay, so this is now the income status. Next is the mode of payment. If you have just the same bank account, then you don't really need to edit this part. And then we're going to proceed to type. And we're going to edit the property in here. So for the subscription, we're going to delete that one. We're also going to delete the rent, the bills, grocery, investment. Okay, so for add an option, I have a few suggestions for you. First is of course our salary. Next is if you are a host of an Airbnb, we're going to put here Airbnb. Next is if you have already been investing long enough, then you're going to have returns. So we have investment returns. And then if you have a small business, we're going to put here small business. Okay, so I think that's it for our income. I'm just going to fill up this table with 2 to 3 sources and I'll be back. Okay, so we are done now with the income. Next, we're going to make a list also for the income. And to do that, we're going to come back to the expenses list, and then there's a plus button in here. We're going to add another database here, which is the January 2024 income. And then we're going to repeat what we did earlier, and then new empty view, and then list, and then done. We also need to rename the list here so that we're not gonna be confused, and we're going to name this income list. So this is the income list and then expenses list. The same as the expenses list, we're going to click in the settings here, and then properties, we're going to show the income date and the status in here. We're also going to hide the database title in here. For now, we're going to go back in the expenses. I forgot to change the name in here. Expenses overview. And then we're going to add another view. We're going to click the board in here, and then done. In the board, we're going to group them to status. If you are making this page with me, some instances that they're not gonna be grouped by status, just click the group in here and then group by, and then click status and then just X. And it's going to show in here the overdue, the paid, and the unpaid sources. We only have 3 sources right now, but if you're going to put your expenses right there, it's going to be long and you're going to appreciate it. In the top corner, we're also going to rename the board as our expenses status. You're also free to do that in the income overview, but in this tutorial, we're going to skip it for now and we're going to proceed with the calendar. For the calendar, we're just going to erase the text in here and then open up a calendar view. For the calendar view, we're going to click either of the two, but we're going to start with the expenses and then new empty view and then calendar and then done. And that's it. And the next is you're going to rename this one as your expenses. Add a new view for our income, new empty view, and then calendar and then done. Rename this as our income. And that's it. Whatever you put here in the table is going to reflect here in our calendar. Notion just released a calendar app that's going to show you all of your database in calendar, but I'm not going to do that because that's a whole entire thing of its own. For now, we're going to have 2 different views, the expenses and the income. Everything will be reflected here in calendar, so you don't need to worry about copy and pasting everything. It is all connected. So as you have seen, this is only the January budget and we're going to make this monthly. How are we going to do that? Is we're going to go back in the finance, and we have here our January budget. What you only need to do is duplicate the page the same as you did as the table. A new January budget will going to appear, and then just change it to February and then erase the one. So now that we are done in the tutorial, I'm going to remind you that everything that I taught you here is already in a template. The link is in the description. You're just going to click that and download the template. In the template that I made, it is the same as the one that I taught you just now, but there are a little improvements along the way. For a new month, for example, you're going to make a February, and then all of this is in paid. So you're just going to click status reset, and then everything will be unpaid. Next is that we also have our icons in here. I already made a template. If you open up, there are Google, Venmo, PayPal, Spotify, and a lot of icons in here. So this is what you get on the Notion template. Thank you for sticking up until the end. If you like productivity and tutorials like this, you could subscribe so you could be updated to my future videos, and I'm going to see you next time.